Did you know that your brain can actually be up to 10 or even 15 years older than the number on your birth certificate? Most people wait for major memory loss to worry about brain health, but by then, the damage has been happening silently for decades. Today, I'm going to reveal the three silent signs that your brain is aging faster than it should, signs that most doctors miss during a standard checkup. But here's the good news. Thanks to a breakthrough study just released in 2025, we now have the strongest evidence yet that you can actually reverse aspects of this aging process through specific lifestyle interventions. Stick with me until the end because I'm going to give you a practical, science backed brain rejuvenation protocol that you can start today. If you want to stay sharp, independent, and vibrant well into your 80s and 90s, this is the most important video you'll watch all year.
I'm Thomas, and I've spent years researching longevity and cognitive health. And we often think about aging in terms of wrinkles or birthdays. But in the medical world, we talk about something far more critical: brain age. This isn't about how many birthdays you've had, it's about the structural and functional integrity of your neurons. Really, it's a measure of your brain's actual health, how well it's firing on all cylinders. And here's why that number matters so much. A landmark study from Stanford University showed that people with what they called extremely aged brains have a shocking 3.1 times higher risk of developing Alzheimer's. Yeah, that's compared to people with young brains who are the exact same chronological age. It's a staggering statistic that tells us the biological state of our brain is just absolutely crucial for our future. So that leads to the big question, right? How do you know if this is happening to you? You can't see it in the mirror like a wrinkle. It's not like an aging joint. You have to look for the silent signs. So in this explainer, we're going to walk through the three biggest silent signs. And then, and this is the exciting part, we're going to talk about how you can actively start to reverse it, to literally rewire your brain with your own cognitive toolkit. All right, let's dive right into our first sign. And what's so fascinating about this one is that it isn't in your head, it's actually in your feet. The first silent sign is your gait speed, which is really just a fancy way of saying how fast you naturally walk. Now, this might sound almost too simple, but believe me, multiple longitudinal studies have shown a direct, powerful correlation between walking speed and brain volume. It's a huge biomarker for neurological health. So think about this. Have you noticed you naturally slowing down? Or here's the big one: do you struggle to walk and talk at the same time? If you have to slow down or stop walking to finish a sentence, it's a sign that your brain's executive control center is working way harder than it should. We call this dual task interference. See, a healthy brain can manage motor skills and cognitive processing at the same time, no problem. But when the brain ages prematurely, it starts to lose that ability. But here's the good news. This isn't some life sentence. There is a fix. We're going to talk about something called neuromotor training a little later, which can actually help you start rewiring these connections. Okay, on to our second silent sign. This one happens while you're asleep, or, well, while you're supposed to be asleep. It all comes down to the quality of your nightly detox. The second sign is fragmented sleep. And I'm not just talking about full blown insomnia. I mean waking up 3, 4, maybe even more times a night, even if you fall right back asleep. The latest research has linked this poor sleep quality directly to accelerated brain aging, and it seems to be driven by chronic inflammation. So, what's actually happening here? Well, your brain has this amazing trash collection service called the glymphatic system. During deep, restorative sleep, this system kicks into high gear, flushing out all the metabolic waste and toxic proteins, like amyloid beta, that build up during the day. But here's the problem. If your sleep is constantly broken up, you never spend enough time in those deep sleep stages for the system to actually work. The trash doesn't get taken out. So if you wake up with that awful brain fog every single morning, it might be because your brain is literally clogged with waste from the night before. And this is a major accelerator of biological aging. And that brings us to our third sign. Now, this one is really subtle. It's often mistaken for just getting older or, suddenly preferring peace and quiet. This third sign is social withdrawal. If you find yourself avoiding complex conversations or skipping social gatherings because they just feel exhausting, that could be your brain losing what we call cognitive resilience. I mean, just think about it for a second. Socializing is one of the most mentally demanding things we do. It requires you to rapidly process language, interpret facial expressions, understand emotional context, recall names and memories, and formulate a response, all at the same time. It's a serious cognitive workout. So, when the brain starts to age prematurely, it has to find ways to save energy. And one of the first things it does is start to prune these incredibly complex and energy hungry social circuits. It's a self preservation tactic, really. Here's the dangerous part. This creates a really nasty feedback loop. You withdraw, which means your brain gets less stimulation, and that lack of stimulation then speeds up the cognitive decline even further. Isolation becomes both a symptom and a cause. Okay, so we've laid out the three silent signs. But I promise, this isn't about doom and gloom. The most incredible part of all this is that science has shown us there is a way to fight back, all thanks to one powerful, hopeful concept. And that concept is neuroplasticity. It's the proven, incredible ability of your brain to reorganize and rewire itself by forming new neural connections. Here's the key: your brain is not fixed, it's designed to adapt and change throughout your entire life. And we have absolute proof that this works in practice. The huge US pointer trial took older adults who were already at risk for cognitive decline and found they experienced measurable, real improvements after following structured lifestyle programs. This tells us that decline is not inevitable. And the programs they used were all based on these four simple, incredibly powerful pillars: move more, eat smart, sleep deep, and connect often. These are the tools we can all use to tap into our brain's natural neuroplasticity. So let's open up this cognitive toolkit. Let's get practical. These are the science backed strategies you can use to start turning back your brain's biological clock. First up, pillar number one: move more, think better. Physical activity is not just for your heart or your waistline, it is one of the most powerful things you can possibly do for your brain. The sweet spot seems to be at least 150 minutes of moderate aerobic exercise every week. Why? Because exercise cranks up the production of a protein called BDNF. The best way to think of BDNF is like miracle grow for your brain cells. It's absolutely essential for neuron growth and survival. Okay, pillar number two: eat smart. And when it comes to brain health, researchers had actually designed a diet specifically for neuroprotection. It's called the Mind Diet. The Mind Diet is basically a greatest hits album of the Mediterranean and DASH diets. It focuses on loading up on foods packed with brain protective nutrients, things like leafy greens, berries, nuts, and fish, while furiously limiting foods that cause inflammation, like red meat and sugary sweets. Now for pillar three, which brings us full circle to that second silent sign. We have to stop thinking of sleep as just passive rest and start treating it as an active, crucial strategy for brain maintenance. This science here is just crystal clear. You need to aim for 7 to 9 hours of high quality, uninterrupted sleep every night. That is the non negotiable window your brain needs to run that glymphatic cleansing cycle, consolidate your memories, and repair itself. And finally, pillar four directly counters our third silent sign. We have to actively fight that social withdrawal trap and instead choose to lean into connection. When we do this, we build something called cognitive reserve. You can think of it like a mental buffer or a rainy day fund for your brain. A lifetime of learning, challenging yourself, and engaging with other people creates this rich, dense neural network that makes your brain far more resilient to the effects of aging. So let's wrap this up. The big takeaways are simple. Your brain's biological age is what really matters. You need to keep an eye out for those silent signs: a slowing walk, fragmented sleep, and pulling back from your social life. But the most important thing to remember is that neuroplasticity is real. Your brain can change. And your tools for making that change happen are to move, eat, sleep, and connect. But after hearing all that, you're probably wondering where we're getting these facts and protocols from, right? It's a fair question. So, in this explainer, we're going to answer that head on. We're going to dive deep into the landmark studies that really form the bedrock of everything we now know about keeping our brains healthy for the long haul. All right, here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with a massive study that proved lifestyle changes can actually work. Then, we'll get into the surprising science of how our brains really age. After that, we'll uncover the incredible biological magic that lets our brains change. And finally, we'll wrap it all up into a practical toolkit for you. Okay, first up is the US Pointer study. And let me tell you, this was an absolute game changer. It was the first really big trial that showed, without a doubt, that simple lifestyle changes can genuinely protect our thinking skills, and they proved it with a huge, diverse group of people. So, the researchers gathered over 2,100 older adults who weren't particularly active. That these weren't just random people, they all had common risk factors for cognitive decline, things like prediabetes or slightly high blood pressure. This makes the result of the study so much more meaningful for so many of us. Then, they did something really smart. They split everyone into two groups to figure out a really important question. How much does having support and a clear plan actually matter? One group got a super structured program with tons of guidance, while the other was kind of left to improve their habits more on their own. In Barrett's structured group, they got the whole shebang. It wasn't just about one thing, it was this combined, multi pronged attack on brain health: physical exercise, a specific brain healthy diet, mental training, and social activities. But here's the kicker: they also had regular coaching and group meetings to keep them on track and motivated. And here it is, the big takeaway. Now, both groups actually saw improvements, which is fantastic news in itself, but the structured group did way better. And in their cognitive function improved so much, it was basically like turning back the clock by 1 to almost 2 years compared to the other group. Amazing, right? What's just so remarkable about this, though, is that these results worked for everybody. It didn't matter how old you were, if you were a man or a woman, or your ethnic background. The benefits even showed up for people carrying the APO4 gene, which is a major genetic risk factor for Alzheimer's. This just proves how incredibly powerful these lifestyle changes really are. Okay, so the pointer study shows us that these changes work. But the next big questions are, well, why do they work? And when is the most important time to get started? Turns out the way our brains age is not what you might think. This incredible research has shown that brain aging isn't some slow, steady downhill slide. Nope. As this quote from a huge study shows, it actually happens in stages, with these really critical moments where change happens a whole lot faster. Scientists had actually mapped out what they call this S curve of brain aging, and it highlights this supercritical window that starts around age 44. This is when the brain starts to have to work a little harder for energy. It becomes what's called metabolically stressed. It's a really pivotal time because it's the first sign of strain, but, and this is the important part, it's also when the brain is incredibly receptive to positive changes. This brings up such a fascinating idea. The difference between your age in years, your chronological age, and the biological age of your brain. Then while you can't change your birthday, the biological age of your brain, how old it acts on a cellular level, can not only be measured, but more importantly, it can be improved. In fact, some absolutely groundbreaking studies have shown that a single brain scan can now measure the pace at which your brain is aging. The findings are just stunning. People with faster aging brains were found to have a 60% higher risk of developing dementia down the line. So, we've seen that lifestyle is a huge deal and that there's this key window to take action. But how in the world do these changes physically alter our brain? The answer lies in one of the most incredible properties of our own biology. It's a cool word: neuroplasticity. This is basically your brain's built in superpower to rewire itself. It's the biological process that allows our brain to physically change in response to everything we do, from learning a new language to just creating a new memory. And this really gets to the core of it all. Our brains are not static. This quote confirms something scientists once thought was impossible: that we can actually grow new brain cells and forge new pathways, even into old age. Our brain is in this constant state of renovation. So, how do we crank up this process? Well, it all comes down to four key pillars. And hey, you might notice these look familiar. They're the exact same interventions that were so successful in the Pointer study. Each one of these, physical wellness, mental challenges, good nutrition, and social connection, gives your brain the raw materials it needs to rewire itself and stay strong. Your brain is incredibly resilient. It has the power to adapt and heal at any age. This is called neuroplasticity, but you have to give it the right tools. If you found this information helpful, please hit the like button so the YouTube algorithm can share this with more people who need to hear it. And if you want more science-backed strategies to stay sharp and healthy, subscribe to Golden Years Pulse. I've also put a link in the description to a free brain health checklist based on the studies we discussed today. Remember, it's never too late to start, but the best time is right now. I'm Thomas, and I'll see you in the next video.